Nice one, Cyril.
Welcome to Nice One, Cyril Emergency Pod. That's right. And one of the great things about Nice One, Cyril is that all the contributors are old farts. And we're either retired, semi-retired, out-of-work actors, or as in my case, someone desperately fighting dementia. And, it's great that we can turn up at any time and do a pod. And boy, do we need one today. So let's start with Julie. The news broke this morning. I think we were all kind of, I was going to say anticipating, but hoping that Thomas Frank would be fired. And lo and behold, off he went.
Phew, I'm glad we got that over with. He should have gone in October when Paratici flounced out because they wouldn't sack him then. Because that was when the trouble was really starting. But we lost Paratici and we kept Thomas. And since then, well, it's the owner's fault, isn't it? If I may quote Bertie Wooster, I dare not wait upon I will. They just left everything far too late, and we're now in the situation we are.
Totally agree. Left it too late. Hopefully, Lee, not too late to save our season, because after last night's performance against Newcastle, that was dire. We were absolutely bossed by another mediocre team. And it was depressing. It was so depressing. Lots of empty seats. I don't know where they came up with that attendance figure from. It had to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It had to happen. It was, it has been, as Julie says, painfully obvious for a long time. But I think last night really was so obvious on several levels. One in front of me, I have never seen so many empty seats. People voting with their feet. Even like there were empty seats at the start, but from about 70 minutes on, people were just trudging out. They just had enough of it. The boos were awful. I mean, look, I don't hate this guy, as some people seem to. I've got some compassion for him, and probably he's had, we talked on the WhatsApp thread about it. Mental health wise, he's probably had a bit of a rough time, to be quite honest. But yes, he had to go. The chants last night of the Pochettino ones, the boos were just too much for anyone to take, and too much for the board to be able to take. It was truly toxic last night.
It really was. I felt for him, Thomas Frank, because I think we agree he's a fundamentally decent, civilized guy. And I actually put a note onto our WhatsApp group last night to say that he, watching him do his post-match press conference, he looked white as a sheet. He looked haunted, and I just thought, for your own health, you've got to go. Even if they don't push you, go, Thomas, and save yourself. So I felt tremendous compassion for him, none of which makes me feel in any way that we should have kept him. Kev, it was an accident waiting to happen, really. There was so much criticism of Frank as our manager, and we're getting stuff coming through on Twitter today, as we speak almost, saying that, players are now revealing that he was only concerned with the opposition and not concerned with our own strengths. And I think we all spotted that very early on, didn't we?
Yeah, it's that sort of risk-averse, careful cautiousness that I think is his downfall. And I think the squad has never been good enough to play in that way. Yeah, he was the wrong person, as everyone says, the wrong person at the wrong time. I suspect he could be quite successful somewhere else, but he was never going to be successful with us. And it's easy to say that in retrospect, but he wasn't. A lot of bad things happened.
What do you think were the elements? I mean, we've seen all sorts of managers struggle at Spurs. So is it that he was the wrong man, or is it that there is no right man?
I hope it was that he was the wrong man, but we've had quite a few wrong men, haven't we, in recent years, and that's the worry for the future. Poch was the right man and then sort of became the wrong man. I know we're probably going to talk about that, who's going to replace Frank ultimately. I hope Poch is the right man if we do appoint him. So I think he probably will be. I'm holding on to what I said the other day, really, that I think he's the right man because he will bring some pride. I'm fed up with, what I was thinking this morning? I'm fed up with people who don't know anything about football taking the piss out of me for supporting Spurs. I don't mind Arsenal fans doing it or Chelsea, but I don't mind that at all. I mind people who don't know anything about football because all they know is that our club is a bit of a joke and a silly soap opera. And I'm fed up with that. And I think that's sort of where I was last night, maybe when I thought Frank's got to go, because from a personal point of view, I want to feel some pride again.
I think we all do. And yes, we have become a bit of a joke. Julia, where do you... I should have said, I was so excited to do an emergency pod that I forgot to introduce everybody. So we got Kevin Acott, we got Lee Brown and Julie Welch, who were all with us for our pod, which we did on Monday, which you should still listen to, obviously, because we were all saying we should sack this guy. So, we were well on top of it. No other pods were saying that, by the way, right? So well worth listening to. Julie, where did he go wrong?
Well, he was a wimp, in my opinion, coming after Ange, who was, not a wimp at all. Ange had his faults, but Ange had charisma. Thomas Frank, I was really, really underwhelmed anyway when they brought him in. I thought there were much better choices to be made. But, I mean, he just had all the personality of a damp dish rag, really, as far as I could see. I mean, a very personable guy, lovely, but he did have that supply teacher vibe, which put me off quite a lot. He didn't look like my idea of any sort of football manager, basically. And I'm just going back to what Kev was talking about. I was even dissed yesterday by a Charlton supporter. That is how low we have sunk under Thomas Frank. And that is one big reason why he should go.
Wow. We have really plumbed the depths, haven't we, if Charlton fans are taking the piss. Lee, I feel like there were so many things not right about Thomas Frank, but I also feel like we're doing that with hindsight. When he came in, I think a lot of fans thought, well, yeah, here's a guy, he's together, he's organised. He's brought a team up with, on limited resources and kept them up. And he's always come across as, intelligent and switched on and perceptive. And yet, almost from the word go, we won our first two matches just to confuse the issue. But pretty much from then on, we lost that Bournemouth match. I think that was the third match. And instantly you thought, oh, hang on, what's the plan here? And as we've gone along, I haven't been able to see a plan.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you there, actually, that right at the start, it'd been said many a time and oft that he would raise our base, but perhaps our ceiling wouldn't be so high. So it's kind of like, in effect, it'd bring stability to the club. And you could see that because we looked actually quite well organised compared to what we'd seen previously. We seemed to have obviously the confidence in the hangover from the cup. And when we played against PSG in that game, we looked a really good outfit. So things looked very promising. There was no reason to suspect that actually we couldn't actually just tighten things up and be quite a good outfit. But as you say, quite quickly afterwards, it just seemed that the vibes weren't working out. And I suspect, like Julie says, this kind of vibe that he gives as a person, as nice as it is, after someone like Ange Postecoglou, who's this tub-thumping kind of Mr. Motivator, someone like him coming in probably was very, very underwhelming. And if he is, as reports are saying, tactically talking about the opposition too much and you can see this with your own eyes, we don't impose ourselves. I mean, just flipping back to last night, one thing I said straight away, it looks like we're the away team at home, the way we were playing. And this are clearly transmitted to the players. So, yeah, it started with great promise, as usual for Spurs, and fizzled out to fuck all.
Yeah, it did, unfortunately. There's lots of stuff coming out today, as I mentioned before. Another thing that has been said, Kev, is that Frank was very tight with his leadership group and the other players could be completely ignored. There was lots of talk, wasn't there, about how he treated Mathys Tel, for example. And I don't know, I don't imagine him as a bloke with lots of favourites and lots of people he doesn't have anything to do with. But, I'm sure more shit will come out. That one sounds less plausible to me, but clearly things weren't right, and it did feel like the players were not pulling for him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're never going to know that, are we? I don't like the idea of a leadership group, frankly. I think a captain and then a sort of organic group of players. Some will be more dominant than others, but having this sort of official, I can just imagine there's an Excel spreadsheet really somewhere where he worked out the leadership group, and I think inevitably that's going to drive some divisions really within the squad. I don't think we're going to know. I think there will be people coming out saying, yeah, all sorts of anti-Frank things, and I think we just have to be a bit careful about that. But whatever he was doing clearly wasn't working. Last night did feel like the best example of it not working. It just looked like no one knew what they were doing on the pitch at all. And there was some good bit. Archie Gray, particularly for the first bit, the second half was brilliant. Xavi for the first bit of the first half was really good. There were little glimpses, as there have been, probably in most matches, but there was no coherence at all.
No, absolutely right. Julia, we've spoken before about the hand Frank was dealt. And, he, as soon as he arrived, he lost two absolutely pivotal players, Maddison and Kulusevski. And since then, it's just been almost comical the way, the strong players have gone down. Kudus for one. Doggy is another one. We've now lost Porro. And so it goes on. And there isn't a kind of a sense of he's been blamelessly sabotaged by this constant flow of injuries. But do you think, given the full squad, he'd have been the right guy?
No, I don't, actually. He didn't have a strong enough personality. To me, the real leadership group is just Ramiro and Mickey, who I think are the dominant people. And I think they thought quite early on, this guy's a bit of a tosser. And that sort of permeated through the rest of the group, in fact. What I would say, though, is you've already alluded to it. He has been incredibly unlucky in terms of injuries. And that is not his fault. It's the fault of owners who haven't given up the strong enough squad for years, in fact. And in those terms, poor Thomas Frank, he is just the bloke that was there when the chickens came home to roost. But I don't think his general demeanour was helpful to him. And as I say, I think, the two dominant characters, their attitude permeated through the rest of the group. And basically, they decided, not for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. We talked before about Paratici giving us the benefit of a final few weeks before he fucked off. And what did he do? Nothing. Langer, to me, is a highly paid waste of space. And so he was let down. We only got Gallagher and I suppose Sousa, of immediate value to the first team squad. So, Lee, it's not just Thomas Frank, is it? There's a club issue, and we've spoken about this on the pod many times. And at least with Levy, I tweeted this morning, there was a guy who was flawed from top to bottom, but what he did have was some love for the club and decisiveness in the face of adversity. And this is something that should have been dealt with before. I just feel like Vinay and all these other people with sinecures and, fancy job titles, I don't know what they're doing, and I don't think they know what they're doing.
I'm not going to be nostalgic for Levy. I think, as we said before, that it was the right time for him to go, and I think the club needs that change to be more modern. But we've gone from, which is a very difficult model to remake straight away, you've gone from a kind of almost like an authoritarian kind of person who just rules micromanages every single part of the club, to a very corporate kind of feel, which is where lots of roles are shared out. And of course, that is going to take some adjustment. And maybe Frank has been the kind of casualty of that change as well. Clearly, he hasn't helped himself. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but I would be very reluctant to kind of look nostalgically back at Levy's time, because I still think overall he's probably the number one cause of why we are where we are at the moment, in terms of the club just not functioning as well as it can because of, historical underinvestment and a lack of ambition. And he was the man. I know Enoch had been behind that, but he was the front man of the band, if you like, for the whole time. His strategic planning for the club has been great in terms of its architecture and all that kind of thing, but it really lacked focus on the playing side of things, which ultimately, of course, is what the club's about. And his underinvestment over the years in that, and his lack of ambition in that, is why we are where we are now, and everyone else is trying to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point there. And funny enough, last night I left the match really early because I could not take it anymore. And I got back to my bicycle, and it's in a car park just across from the stadium. And I looked up at that stadium and I thought, fuck it, it's magnificent. Look at that thing with the lights and the size of it and the majesty of it. And I thought, they'll be in the fucking championship with this place next year. So look, it's the right thing has happened today, Kev. I think we'll all agree with that. So where do we go from here?
I don't know. I was just thinking about what Julie mentioned earlier about Jeeves and Worcester, and it feels like there's a whole load of Bertie Worcesters running the club, and there's no Jeeves. There's no sensible voice there in the background. So whether they're going to make the right choice, I don't know. I think it feels like the logical thing is an interim, and an interim, I guess, that we like, just to give everyone a sense of sort of purpose and a little bit of excitement. Whether that's, I've seen Robbie Keane mentioned, Ledley King assisting Harry Redknapp. I've seen various sort of suggestions. I think any of those for now, just to give us a little boost to get past the Arsenal match without utter humiliation, would be nice.
Yeah.
And to stay up. And then for me, Poch in the summer. It's just, let's go with the emotional.
I'm shaking my head because I'm just getting messages from Burnley fans and all sorts with Big Sam, it's time, this kind of stuff. Oh, God. We're just going to get clogged for the next few days, aren't we?
I think that I saw the writing on the wall when John Heitinger arrived as assistant coach. I thought that's his that's his interim manager being lined up. And I would be prepared to bet on Heitinger being in charge for the next couple of weeks at least. I mean, the only alternative that seems to have any sort of root in reality is De Zerbi, who's just left Marseille. I don't know whether he's been booted out or whether he's walked out in order because he's been tapped up already for the Spurs job. It's just a completely left field appointment in my opinion, because I mean, what's he done really? He was very good at Brighton and with Brighton's structure, but that's the same kind of thing as, Frank was very good at Brentford.
I called him a pound shop Conte. Lots of shouting and passion and madness on the touchline, but I don't know whether his achievements actually amount to very much. So I'm not a big De Zerbi fan, but if it's a tiding us over thing, you want a bit of passion in that dressing room, he might be the guy. But I think we're all kind of feeling it's Poch next. But I tell you what, look, for a bit of fun, as we come towards the end of this podcast, emergency podcast, no less, the board had a 30-point checklist for appointing their next manager. That's how we managed to stumble across Thomas Frank. So what's the board got on that checklist?
I've put together 5 that I believe that must be on that checklist. So if I can just reel those off for you and then see what you guys think. So 1, has managed in London before, so won't get lost. 2, says project at least 3 times in the interview and bonus points for pointing at a slide that might have DNA on it. 3, has beaten a Big 6 club at least once and ideally us.
Yep.
4, demonstrates elite touchline presence.
Yes,
chewing gum, mouth fully open, very much, appreciated.
Yeah.
Extra points for how wide the gob
Yes.
is. And then finally, a promise to unlock at least 2 players we already own because that's cheaper than buying new ones.
Well, I think you've nailed 5. They're absolutely perfect.
Yes.
I've got a couple. I've got good hair, and that's where Poch, absolutely scores. He'll tick that box. And then we've got can use an iPad. I don't know about Poch on iPads, so you probably need something like, likes a bowl of lemons. That I'm not sure that will be on the list. You got any, Kev?
I once saw Thomas Frank wearing a leather jacket in the post-match interview, and he's far too old for that. And although I shouldn't be one to criticise people's hair, I'm not sure I agree with you. He's too old for that hair and that leather jacket. So I would like someone young enough to get away with a leather jacket and Thomas Frank's hair.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's good. And Julie, finally on that note,
I think that he ought to really be a member of parliament when they do that thing that I can't remember what the term is, but somebody just talks for hours and hours till there's no more time to sit.
Filibustering.
That's right. Yes, that's filibustering. I think that he was very good at the filibuster when he had to turn up after yet another 1-0 defeat by a mid-table side. And he would sort of filibuster to the press for hours and hours, saying absolutely nothing of any value whatsoever, instead of going into the dressing room and bollocking the squad.
I feel like we've covered most of the requirements for the next manager. And that's what we do here on Nice One, Cyril. So there we are. Do tune in to our pod from yesterday, which is still valid, isn't it, guys and girls? I mean, it is still valid, notwithstanding that it predates the demise of Thomas and that horrific performance last night. Do give us a follow on Twitter at Nice One Cyril Pod, and have a look at our website www.niceonecyrilpodcast.co.uk, idiot. And we're all over social media, and do subscribe also to the podcast. You'll never miss an episode. Thanks to Julie and to Lee and Kev. Go back to what you weren't doing before, and we'll be back soon. Thanks for joining us. Come on, you Spurs.
Nice one, Cyril.